Hey guys, in this video today, we're going to be going through and doing full predictions for this 2022 World Cup wall chart predictor provided by the Telegraph here. This is actually the only bracket game thing I could find online at the moment. We're going to be going through, I'm going to be giving predictions for every group, knockout rounds, everything, and I'll be giving you my champions at the end. Before I hop right into that, let me say two things. One, I will be providing the link for this in the description below, so if you guys want to go ahead and do your own predictions, that'll be down there. And also, I want you guys to leave your comments and sort of react to my predictions that I'm going to be doing here today. Secondly, I wanted to let you guys know that I'm going to be going through more in-depthly group by group breakdowns and analysis before the tournament starts. So that means Group A, Group B, all the way through, given some more more granular level commentary about each group before the World Cup. With all that being said, I want to thank you guys for being here watching. Let's hop into this predictor here. So at the top here it says, will England and Gareth Southgate in 56 years of hurt in Qatar select first, second, and third place in each group and the winners of each knockout round to find your World Cup champions? So let's start with Group A. So you have Qatar, Ecuador, Senegal, and the Netherlands. So I feel like a lot of people here are going to be choosing the Netherlands to win the group. Let me just say before I order my teams here is that Senegal and Ecuador are not bad teams, and even Qatar, they're probably one of the lower ranked teams at this tournament. They're not a walkover team either. They've gotten better in recent years. So I think this group is a little bit more interesting than people may give credit for. I would say on paper the Netherlands still are the best team. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and do my group winner being the Dutch, followed by, I think I'm going to go with Ecuador or Senegal as my second place team. It's actually kind of difficult to choose because obviously Senegal have Sadio Mane, Edouard Mendy from Chelsea, Idrissa Gueye, they have Koulibaly. They have really good players, and not only that, they have those players at each level. So they have those players in goal, in the defense, in the midfield, and in attack. So they have a really good core. It's a really tough call here. I think I'm going to go, though, with Senegal as second place. That's my Group A, Netherlands, Senegal, and then Ecuador, Qatar going home. So let's move on to Group B now. You have England, Iran, the United States, and Wales. Obviously, on paper, England are the best team, and I would agree, rightly so, even as an American. I think second place again in this group is very interesting because you have, just like Group A, you have second and third place I think are very close between the USA and Wales. I think Wales are 18th or so in the FIFA ranking, something like that, and the United States are 15th. And look, I'll be the first to tell you guys, FIFA rankings are not the be-all end-all. There's a specific formula, used to calculate your rankings. It's basically your national team record in all competitions, and then your opponent gets weighted. For example, England just lost twice to Hungary in the Nations League, so they're going to be penalized in the FIFA rankings for that. In the next iteration of the rankings, if England drops by a spot or two, that wouldn't surprise me. I don't think there's a ton of difference between the USA, Wales, Iran. They're all sort of in the same ballpark. Obviously, I would say the USA is the second best team, but it's not, like I said, it's not by miles, right? I think if you took the FIFA rankings actually for every group in this tournament and you averaged them out, I believe Group B has the highest average ranking, which may surprise you because you look, some of these other groups are pretty formidable. You probably wouldn't guess Group B. This is sort of a tricky group. This is more up in the air than I think, again, people want to give it credit for, because England and the United States, they obviously have a rivalry. That's the old enemy. And then England and Wales have a rivalry too, because they're obviously in the UK. To use an NFL phrase, these are like division games. These are opponents that there's extra juice in these games. They're legitimate rivalries. I was thinking back to qualifying when Wales was qualifying. Scotland was also in that group, and they have a rivalry with England. Scotland played England at the Euros in 2020, and Wales played them at Euro 2016. So I think these games are going to be more competitive than people think. And even Iran, I think Iran are the highest ranked team in Asia. So before people just go ahead and automatically throw England first, I think you may want to think about those things. For my predictions here, I think first place ultimately will go to England. I have faith that just the quality they have, and I'm not going to base my predictions off of the Nations League results because I understand that they didn't have their full squad. It's the end of a long season. They don't truly care about winning these games. You know, obviously you don't want to get relegated to League B, but I'm not going to panic over those results. And I'm going to trust that when the tournament comes around, England's quality will show up. So now second place in this group, I have to go with the United States. Let me give you guys some reasons. Obviously, as an American, I'm not just gonna BS you guys and, you know, pretend like the United States is gonna win this World Cup. I know they're not. So let me give you some legitimate reasons why I think they will finish second and make it out of this group. This team here now, the US men's national team, they actually have a legitimately talented squad that I would say probably is better than what they had in 2010, 2014, and even in 2017 when they were trying to qualify for the World Cup and ultimately missed. I think the squad they have right now is better than all three of those teams. We have a technically gifted midfield along with a lot of physical play in our team. We have smart players. We sort of have a bit of everything, and I like that. We have multiple goalkeepers we can go to. I think we're just a little bit better than Wales, and it's good for Wales. They haven't made the World Cup in a really long time, and so I do think they will get third and Iran fourth. But to be honest, this is going to be one of the groups I look back on, and I think there could be chaos in this group because, you know, what if the USA, they play England in their first game, right? Or no, they play them in their second game. They play Wales first. So what if the USA goes and beats England on Black Friday? If England loses that game, they're kind of in trouble. That means they have pressure on them to go win their third group game, which is against Wales. And like I mentioned, they have a legitimate rivalry. Gareth Bale has played this team before. He scored a free kick in the Euros in 2016 from like 35 yards. And don't sleep on Iran. I remember watching them in 2018 and just how negative they were, how they put everyone behind the ball. But look, they almost knocked out Portugal in 2018 out of the group stages. And, you know, playing that style can get you results. So moving on to Group C, we've got Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Poland. It's another group that you have clearly the best team is Argentina, Saudi Arabia, which I think is clearly the fourth best team, and then you have Mexico, Poland. And so let me go and put Argentina first. I think they will win this group. I think they just have a strength about their team that's just, frankly, I don't think Saudi Arabia can play with them, and I think they're definitely a little bit better than both Mexico and Poland. Second place, I think a lot of people, maybe if you're not following international football outside of the tournaments, you might think that, oh, obviously Mexico will finish second. And I actually don't think so. Mexico is in the same region as the United States, which is CONCACAF. By following the United States, you obviously come up against Mexico. I know the team a little bit, and I think they're trending downward. You know, I wouldn't say, I know they're still top 10 technically FIFA rankings, that they're higher than the United States, but I think they're sort of ticking down right now, and I think the United States is ticking up. Mexico, with the poor form, like I mentioned, if you look at the last 4 results against the United States, 2 of them were World Cup qualifiers, 2 of them were Nations League final and Gold Cup final, and in those last 4 meetings, the USA is unbeaten against Mexico. And this is coming from an American. I can tell you, it seems like Mexico in those games always used to beat the United States, and I think that's starting to turn now. Poland have Lewandowski. They have a new manager since the Euros. I think Poland will get second here, and I think Mexico will end up third and actually not make it out of the group this time. I know they have the streak also of like 5 World Cups in a row, losing in the round of 16, like the curse of the 5th game or whatever. I could totally see Mexico failing to get out of the group here. And so I'm going to go Argentina, Poland. Group D features France, Australia, Denmark, Tunisia. This group right here, Group D, is actually the same group as 2018, the same teams. It's except for one. In 2018, it was France, Australia, Denmark, Peru, and this time around, it's France, Australia, Denmark, Tunisia, not Peru. To be honest, on a personal side note, I actually don't love that. I kind of want to see it mixed up every tournament. You could argue France are the best team in the world. I won't argue with that. I think when you get more to the later stages, the knockout stages, we can talk more about what could go wrong for France in this tournament, and I'll touch on that. But for purposes of the group stage predictions, I think France are the best team. This is another thing I want to put some info out there about Denmark. I think people severely underrate this team. I think people look at, maybe the Euros and they think that they're a fairy tale team, maybe because of what happened to Christian Eriksen and how they responded, making it all the way to the semifinals. And to be honest, I reject that, because if you guys go back to 2018 in the World Cup, they lost to penalties against Croatia in the round of 16. They were one penalty away basically from making the quarterfinals against what it would have been Russia versus Denmark, and Denmark probably would have beat them. So they were very, very close to making it very far in Russia. Also in 2018, France was in their group. They drew them 0-0. If you want to look at the finalists from 2018, France and Croatia, they drew France and they drew Croatia, and they lost on penalties. So that's pretty strong, right? Now you fast forward to 2020, all the stuff at the Euros with Eriksen. They go on and they make it to the semifinals, and they lose on a penalty in extra time. So they make it very far again, and I still think people underrate them and they treat them as they're sort of like an outsider. I just don't buy that. They've proven to be a really good team. So they are a legit top 10 team in the world in my mind. Honestly, I think Denmark will challenge for this group. They just beat France in the Nations League at the Stade de France. And there's a return leg now in September. We'll see what happens. But I think Denmark have shown us over and over, and I know they're not a sexy team. They don't have the superstars that obviously France have, Mbappe, Benzema, all those guys. Denmark, though, they're just a really good team. They have a really good coach, Kasper Hjulmand. They have a strong sense of leadership on that team with Simone Kjær. Do not sleep on them, please. Third and fourth, I think, honestly, are a step down from France and Denmark. I'm going to go with Australia in third and Tunisia fourth. And to be honest, guys, I would say Tunisia, I think they're one of the worst teams at this tournament. And I'm not trying to hate on them. Even with Australia, I don't see how either of those teams make it out of the group. Group D to me is all about France and Denmark. Group E, Spain, Costa Rica, Germany, Japan. I think basically everybody in their predictions will be picking Spain and Germany to go through. I think I will too, actually, but let me give a couple more thoughts about this group. Costa Rica have Keylor Navas, one of the best goalkeepers in the world, right? Japan, most people probably don't follow Asian soccer or Asian national teams, so people probably just simply don't know about Japan. To be honest, I don't follow them much either, but I will say in 2018, they were the only team from Pot 4 to make it out of the group stages. I went back and looked how many teams from Pot 1 and Pot 2, because those are the top 16. So how many of those teams made it out of the group stage in 2018? And the number was 13 out of 16. And two of the teams that weren't in Pot 1 and 2, they were in Pot 3. Japan was the only team from Pot 4 to make it. So massive credit to Japan for that, because that's insanely hard to do. The way the draw is set up, the way it's formatted, you have a real uphill battle coming from Pot 4. And they were able to make it out of the group, and they were beating Belgium 2-0. They were beating them down before Belgium turned it on and scored 3 goals at the end of that game. Don't just write these two teams off and talk all about Spain and Germany, which, let's do that right now. Spain and Germany, these are two of the top nations, two of the favorites maybe, especially Spain. Germany are on the way back with Hansi Flick. I think they're unbeaten now in 13-something games with him as manager, coming from Bayern. I think in this group, the Spain-Germany game is going to be so big. It's going to be a rematch of World Cup semifinal in 2010, the Euro 2008 final. Costa Rica, I think, may be able to throw a monkey wrench into things here. But first place is really hard to pick here. I'm going to go with Spain. I don't do that comfortably because I know Hansi Flick really has turned this team around, and I had hoped that he would too. I believe that he would do this. The only caution I would say right now about Germany is that if you look at the list of teams they've played, they've beat Liechtenstein, teams like that. But hey, recently they've also played Italy twice and whooped them, even though they've sort of fallen apart since the Euros. But I just think Spain, guys, they have a really good group of young players coming through. You've got Pedri, Gavi. They stole Aymeric Laporte from France on their national team. You still have Jordi Alba, Sergio Busquets. You've got up front, they rotate basically Ferran Torres, who's a really good player, Alvaro Morata, Dani Olmo. These players are sort of unsexy, I would say. It's actually surprising to me how fast Spain was able to bring along the next group of players after having a couple down years at tournaments. I didn't expect them to actually be this good again that fast, that they would legitimately be like one of the 3-4 best teams in the world, one of the top favorites for this tournament, but they are. I'm going to put Germany second. And look, everything I just said about Spain, Germany sort of are falling into that same category. They have a ton of young talent. This will be the first time at a major tournament that I get to see Joshua Kimmich playing in the midfield spot that he actually plays for Bayern, for his club. If you guys go back and look, it's so infuriating to watch this, because 2016 at the Euros, Kimmich was playing right back. World Cup 2018, Kimmich was playing right back. Euro 2020, Yogi Löw messed the system all up and they're playing 3-4-3. Guess who's playing right wing back? Lobbing crosses into the box all tournament long. Playing arguably your best, most important player out of position. I'm just like, man, I crave this team to play 4-2-3-1 just like Bayern did. Because, they have so many Bayern players in this squad. You've got Neuer in goal. The midfield is Bayern. It's Goretzka and Kimmich. You've got Sula still in the picture at the back. Up front, you've got Muller, Gnabry, Sané. I really wanted Hansi Flick to come in and change it up. Basically do everything that he did at Bayern when they went off and won the treble a couple years ago, where he just completely turned Bayern around and they started honestly just mowing teams down. They went on, they won the Champions League, they won everything. They hardly lost any games. Even between now and the World Cup, several months from now, I think Germany will still be getting better. A couple questions about the team I would have is they've played a lot of different defenders, sort of like a back four. They've swapped out and rotated those guys. They don't really have a set back four at this moment. And then also in attack, they kind of rotate their attackers because they have so many, like Timo Werner, Thomas Muller, Gnabry, Sané, Musiala. It's truly splitting hairs between Spain and Germany, but I'm going to go with this for now. And then third place, I think we're going to get Costa Rica. I will go third and Japan fourth. I don't really know how good Costa Rica are outside of Keylor Navas. I know I saw them play the United States in qualifying, and I think they beat the United States. I don't think the US has ever won in Costa Rica. They made it to the quarterfinals in Brazil in 2014. So honestly, good to see them back at the World Cup. They earned it. Good for CONCACAF. Let's move on to Group F now. Belgium are, there's so much to talk about with Belgium and their golden generation, and this being their last opportunity probably to win a major trophy with this group. You could even argue that time is past. Croatia, on the other hand, they made the World Cup final in 2018. Luka Modric still playing. Honestly, he's 36 or whatever, but he's still playing at the top of his game. Just won the Champions League again for a 5th time. He's one of the best players of his generation, period, at any position. And now Croatia is going to come up against Belgium, Canada, and Morocco in the World Cup. On paper, Belgium, I think you could say, are number 1 in this group, although they sort of are in a bit of tough times because, they just played the Netherlands in Nations League, and you sort of saw all the concerns manifest with what people talk about, which is their defense is sort of slow, sort of old, with Alderweireld, Vertonghen, Boyata. Not very convincing at all from those guys. And I know they have Thibaut Courtois, who proved to basically be the best goalkeeper in the world at the moment. It's going to be tough to win a tournament with a back three that's struggling that much. And to be honest, they don't really have the young players coming in behind those guys to replace them like a France does or like a Portugal or some other teams do. It truly does feel like the end of their generation. They obviously still have De Bruyne, who's one of the best players in the world. Lukaku had a really bad season this year for Chelsea, but we've seen, consistently now from him at international level what he's about. And obviously the question mark that's honestly going to determine a lot with Belgium, I think, is the health of Eden Hazard, or the lack thereof. Because if you guys remember, this dude was arguably the best player at the 2018 World Cup along with Modric, and that feels like years ago now, right? Because he's been injured at Real Madrid, basically 2 or 3 years straight now. He has hardly done anything. He's been a disaster signing. And look, it's not his fault, but he's had tons, I think it's like 25 injuries. It's insane. If they can get him back healthy, Belgium can be at the top of their game for this one last run. Am I counting on that? It's hard to say. I would lean no right now. It's just, you just don't know what you're going to get with Hazard. Belgium have a good squad. I think, though, first place in this group is going to go to Croatia. I actually don't think Croatia are better than Belgium, but I think in this tournament, by the time we fast forward to the end of the year, Croatia's midfield they have Brozovic, they have Modric, Rakitic is out of the picture now, but they still have Kovacic. In attack, they still have Perisic, and they have some new faces, and I actually like that group of players. I don't think they had a really good Euros. I thought they were a bit disappointing, but the quality of this team is still there, so that's why I'm going to pick them to finish first. And now second, I'm going to go with Belgium. That means Canada, Morocco, not going to make it, but let me just say a word on Canada. They finished first in North American qualifying. They finished better than the USA and Mexico. And then on top of that, guys, I can just see Jonathan David and Alphonso Davies running at Belgium's backline. And every time that occurs in my head, it doesn't end well. And so I think if there's going to be one catastrophic crash out in the group stages of this tournament, it might be Belgium, guys. You'll have to let me know what you think about that. I know it's so hard to imagine that, but look, the World Cup is crazy. 2018, the World Cup champions, Germany, the holders, went out in the group stage, and they didn't have a good tournament at all, and it was a lot of the same players that won the World Cup, and they rolled the same team out, and they didn't perform at all. If you watch the World Cup long enough, you will know that it's very hard to predict. And so I think if you're going to look at all the top nations in this tournament, I think Belgium may be the most vulnerable to getting upset, specifically because of that. Their slow back three is going to go up against Canada's front line guys they have a ton of pace. And if you want to talk about Morocco, they have Achraf Hakimi, one of the best right backs in the world. He's got a ton of pace. We'll see if Hakim Ziyech comes back. That's to be determined, but they have players too. And so Belgium, they need to find their form. Roberto Martinez is a good manager. It's just, they're on shaky ground right now, Belgium. I would say if there's going to be an upset, I would say Canada would finish second. But for the moment, we're going to go Croatia, Belgium. On to Group G, we've got Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland, Cameroon. So Brazil, favorites for this tournament. I think rightly so, the favorites. I think they've earned their '1 team in the world status. I think Brazil have proven to be a legitimately strong team. Neymar, Richarlison, Vinicius Jr. In midfield, they have Casemiro, Lucas Paqueta, Fred. In defense, they've got Danilo, probably Dani Alves still makes this roster. We'll see. Thiago Silva, Marquinhos, Eder Militao, Alexandro at left back. I don't think Marcelo's in the picture anymore, but truly they have quality all over the field. They have two really good goalkeepers, Alisson and Ederson from City and Liverpool. Brazil probably going to finish first here. Second place, though, Serbia, Switzerland. I think a lot of people would just pencil in Switzerland as second. This is another group, actually, that was 3 of the 4 teams were the same as 2018. We had Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland in the same group also. History repeating itself. A lot has changed, though. Switzerland, I think, are on the downswing a little bit. Their generation is getting older. Players like Jan Sommer still really good, but Xhaka, Shaqiri, those guys who have been around forever, I think their run is kind of coming to an end, just like Belgium is, even Croatia. Serbia, on the other hand, Serbia finished first in their qualifying group. They finished ahead of Portugal. They actually went to Portugal on the final day of qualifying, and they beat Portugal for the first time in their history, which vaulted them into first place and directly qualifying for the World Cup, sending Portugal to the playoff. I'm going to do it, guys. I'm going to put Serbia second qualifying. They have legitimate talent on this team. It's not a fluke. Guys like Tadic, really good players. I watched this dude destroy Real Madrid in the Champions League a couple years back, and they obviously proved themselves in qualifying. Strong team. I could see Switzerland still making it through, but for my first iteration here, we're going to go with Serbia. And then Cameroon fourth. I don't know what to make of Cameroon going into this World Cup because, you know, African qualifiers probably need to be redone a little bit, because the fact that Egypt and Senegal played each other for a spot at the World Cup when they're arguably the two best teams in Africa, it's kind of a disaster. But Algeria were beating Cameroon. Cameroon scored a goal. I think they have away goals in qualifying there. Algeria got scored on in the 124th minute, so stoppage time of extra time, and that's how Cameroon qualified. By ranking, they're one of the worst teams at this World Cup also. It's hard for me to really get a grasp on what Cameroon is going to be about. But we're going to move on now to Group H. So we got Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay, South Korea. Portugal, I think, are clearly the best team in this group. I'm going to go first for them. This is another group here that I think is better than they were definitely in 2016 when they won the Euros, which is still crazy to believe. I think they're a better team than 2018 also. You could argue Portugal are maybe alongside France as far as depth of talent all the way down the roster. You could argue they are one of the two most talented teams in the world, if not like top 3, top 5 for sure. Second in this group, I still think Uruguay will finish second. You're still going to have to deal with probably Godin, Jimenez, Cavani, Suarez. They still have Betancourt. They still have Fede Valverde from Real Madrid, really good younger player. So I think Uruguay will make it through, but they're lucky to be at the World Cup. They qualified. They were kind of on shaky ground. They qualified near the end. I actually think South Korea will finish third and Ghana fourth. So that rounds up the group stage. We're going to move on now to the round of 16. This is where the sharp end of the tournament begins. This is where things really start to heat up, guys. This is what we're all waiting for. First game over here is going to be Netherlands versus the United States. The Netherlands are a more talented squad, basically on all 3 levels. I would say maybe Americans have an advantage in goalkeeper, depending on who it is. But I just think the Netherlands in this kind of game would be too much. They're going to have Van Dijk, De Ligt, De Jong, Wijnaldum, Dumfries, Memphis, all those guys. And I actually like the United States midfield with Adams, McKennie, Musa, and then Pulisic in attack, obviously. I think our midfield can actually get it, you know, teams like England in our group. But I still think the Netherlands are they're on their way back like Germany is, back to being where they should after some disappointing tournaments and then not making tournaments. So I'm going to go with the Dutch here. I still think the United States, as I mentioned before about them, they are a legitimately talented generation right now, and I think the farthest they could go at this World Cup would be the quarterfinals. The only way they're going to do that is they would have to win their group, so the United States would have to finish first, and then in Group A, because that's who Group B plays, I think you're going to have to hope Senegal finish second. So the round of 16 game would be, instead of England-Senegal, it would be the United States versus Senegal. And in that scenario, I actually would pick the USA to win that game. And it wouldn't be easy. Senegal they're not a cakewalk. I think I would pick the United States in that game, and I think that would be their path to the last 8, which is going really far. I think the USA are the youngest team at this tournament. I think it's actually very advantageous for the US to have such a young squad. I actually think they will do well because of that. They have so much just youth in their team. But ultimately, I think the Netherlands are simply just better than us, and so I'm going to have to go with them. Argentina, Denmark. This is tough. Everything I said about Denmark before is true. They can definitely beat Argentina. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But I think a lot of people are picking Argentina. And not because it's Messi's last World Cup and he's going to go out on top, but just because it's not a fully Messi reliant team. There's legitimate quality all over this Argentine team. You got Emi Martinez in goal. You still have Otamendi, Romero, Montiel at right back, Tagliafico. The midfield is really good with DePaul and Paredes. And then obviously in attack, you still have Messi, Di Maria, Lautaro Martinez. We'll see about if Dybala makes it, but this is not the 2014 Argentine team. This is a legitimately talented squad that Messi can complement them. He doesn't have to drag them forward. I think a lot of people will pick Argentina to go far, if not win the tournament, because of that. But for me, I'm going to go with Denmark. And let me give a couple reasons maybe why I think they can go and win this game. Everything I mentioned before about them during the group phase is true. So they have a really good manager, a really good team. They are a smart team. They are disciplined. They have leaders all over the field. They're a really big, physical, tough team. Like, they win all the headers in their games if you watch them. You just never know. World Cup knockouts are completely unpredictable. All the teams here on the left you see are group winners because that's just the format of how FIFA has done World Cups. Basically, all the first place teams play the second place teams in the round of 16. So if you guys look here, the teams on the left won their group and the teams on the right are second. Now, if you just want to go through here and pick all the teams that finished first, I can guarantee you that you will be wrong about that. So if you go through and you pick, under this scenario, if you pick Netherlands, Argentina, England, France, Spain, Brazil, Croatia, Portugal, that will be incorrect, 100%. Some of these teams are going to lose. Again, people are going to underrate Denmark. If they come up against Argentina, everyone's going to be on Argentina. It's Messi's last World Cup. I'm fully aware Argentina probably are a better team than them, but look, it doesn't matter. It's all about who plays better on that day. You know, they're not playing a 10-game series here. So I'm going to go Netherlands and Denmark to advance to a quarterfinal. England, I think, are fortunate to draw Senegal over some of these other teams. And it's just because Group A plays Group B, Group C plays Group D, and so on. E plays F. England, I think they got one of the more favorable draws here in the round of 16, and I think ultimately they will go through. With Gareth Southgate, a lot of people rag on him. He is a good manager, and he's a likable guy and all that, but the question still remains with Southgate is, you have so much talent in this generation of England players. Are you ever going to unleash them, or are you just going to keep playing everybody behind the ball, and then are we just going to counterattack the whole tournament? Because it leads to a lot of boring football. The other side of the coin is, hey, look, Southgate has taken England to a World Cup semifinal and then a Euro 2020 final. So the next step is, oh, go win the World Cup. I would say slow your roll on that. Just because they've done that at the last two tournaments doesn't mean that, oh, well, England's, of course they're going to win the World Cup now. That's just what's going to happen next. That's not how it works. England are still one of the best teams in the world. Again, a little bit like Belgium, they're going to have to find their form. They struggle to produce anything in the Nations League games, and I know they didn't have their full squad, but Southgate does have something to prove here. I think they'll get through Senegal. France versus Poland here in the next game. Nobody's going to pick Poland, but let me throw this out there for you guys. France, they sort of have a history of either infighting or drama or just something going wrong for these guys at tournaments. So you want to talk about at the Euros in 2020, you had the whole Benzema, Giroud little dust up. When they lost to Switzerland, there was stories about Rabiot's mom yelling at the other moms of the players in the crowd. They obviously 2010, we don't need to talk about. But then this team, they're also the reigning World Cup champions. And they have Didier Deschamps still as manager. A lot of people would say that's not a great thing because a little bit like England, he's a really defensive-minded coach. Tactically, you could argue he gets a lot of stuff wrong. And so are you going to go with that, or are you going to go with just all the talent they have from Lloris, Varane, Pavard, Kimpembe, Lucas Hernandez, Theo Hernandez, Pogba, Kanté, Mbappe, Benzema, Griezmann, Coman, all those guys on paper surely should beat Poland. But again, let me remind you all, Euro 2020, everybody at that time was talking about how this is obviously France's tournament to lose. They're the best team. They should win it. They got eliminated in the round of 16. Their first game, they played Germany. They won that game. They had 2 offside goals taken off, and they ultimately won 1-0 because Matt Hummels had an own goal. Second game, they played Hungary. Hungary drew them 1-1. Third game, they played Portugal. Drew Portugal 2-2. Round of 16, they played Switzerland. After they went down 1-0, Switzerland had a penalty, Lloris saved it, that completely flipped the switch for France, and for that little bit of time, for a maybe 20-minute period in the second half of that game, we saw what France could be if they played to their full potential, but we rarely see that. And so France took the lead in that game 3-1. They took their foot off the gas completely. Switzerland got 2 goals, so we got 3-3 extra time, and then nobody scored an extra time, and Switzerland won on penalties. Mbappe missed. So all the conventional wisdom about France has sort of been turned on its head a little bit, right? Are you going to bet against all this talent? Like, I know there's a history of World Cup holders not doing well and not making it out of the group stage recently, and I don't think any of that's going to apply here to France. I'm going to pick them. Please don't dismiss Poland and Lewandowski, because the French have shown us that things can fall apart, right? And Didier Deschamps, he's probably going to be out of that position sooner than later, probably right after this World Cup. Zidane is going to be coming in most likely. I have a hard time seeing France repeating, just because I've seen the mistakes, the mismanagement, the wrong tactics, those kind of things. Obviously, talent-wise, they're top of the list. You wouldn't pick anybody over Mbappe if you were making a team right now. I'm just saying, beware, guys. Now let's move on here to the last 4 games of the round of 16. Spain versus Belgium. So this is a massive fixture right here. Basically, since the Euro 2012 final, until the Euros this past year, they hadn't won a knockout game at a tournament in, was it like 8 years? Their turnaround has been rather quick and rather impressive. This group of players here, I mentioned it in the group stage part, they have such a good young group of players, and I think they're only going to be getting better. We'll see if Ansu Fati is healthy and makes this squad, but he has a ton of potential. Obviously, Pedri at the Euros, guys. Oh my God, this dude ran the game in that midfield, and now Gavi has come along. I love him as a player. He's so good in the midfield. Belgium have all the talent in the world, but I think in this game, I'm going to go with Spain. I think it's probably going to be the end of the golden generation for Belgium, and in this specific game, you're basically going to be asking Belgium to defend, I would say, quite a bit. It's not going to be like possession's going to be 70-30, but this is sort of the formula to beat them. You have to own the ball, because what Belgium are going to want to do, they're going to be trying to possess the ball as a form of playing defense, and I just don't see that working. I'm going to go with Spain to advance here. And let's see who they're going to play now between Brazil and Uruguay. A CONMEBOL matchup here between 2 top nations from South America. Brazil, I think, will win this game. Uruguay, this is a rivalry game, no doubt about it. These teams know how each other play. They've played each other a ton. Sort of, if you look at CONMEBOL South American teams, they all sort of have this, physical, gritty, nasty style about them. And I think actually this will bode well, because this World Cup is going to be in Qatar in inclement weather, you might say, because of the heat. And I actually think that favors the South American teams. Brazil still have all that flair. They have a strong, powerful midfield. They have a strong, powerful back end. They have a really good goalkeeper. I think they're just better than Uruguay. Not to say they couldn't beat them. I'm sure they could. International football a lot of times comes down to things like set pieces. I think they'll make it through. On here to the next one, we've got Croatia v Germany. This is another heavyweight matchup here. So you're going to have Modric and Kovacic versus Kimmich and Goretzka. So really a matchup of the midfielders here. Croatia is getting older. I would love to see Modric go far in this tournament, but if we're being realistic here, fast forward 5 months from now, I've already seen a lot to like from this new Germany team. You have so much talent in attack. I think I'm going to go with Germany here. Although, look, Croatia, you guys definitely can win this game. I wouldn't hate it either. And now, last game of the round of 16, Portugal versus Serbia. This is actually a rematch of the qualifying group that I was talking to you guys about, because Serbia sent them to the playoff, and this is where we all thought, oh no, Portugal's going to miss the World Cup because Switzerland sent Italy to the playoff, and when the draw happened, Portugal and Italy got put into the same path. So it was like, oh my God, Portugal and Italy, they're going to win their little semifinal games and they're going to meet in the final. and one of them's not going to make the World Cup, and that's just terrible. Italy fell apart. They played North Macedonia. They outshot them. It was like 32 to less than 5, something crazy like that, and they lost at home. And so Portugal played them in the final of their little path, and they made it through. I think I'm going to go with Portugal here. This is going to be a revenge game for them. Obviously, Ronaldo's last World Cup. Portugal, I have advancing to the quarterfinals. So let's move on down. So last 8, guys, we've got Netherlands versus Denmark, Spain versus Brazil, England versus France, Germany versus Portugal. This is going to be the hardest set of games to pick on the entire board because, I mean, look at this. All 8 of these teams can win their game. So if you want to start with Netherlands, Denmark, probably going to be a super tight game. Are the Orange back, or are Denmark going to make another semifinal? I could totally see it. The fairy tale ending that I think people haven't started talking about enough yet is Eriksen returning to the World Cup. You know, he returned in a friendly against, who did he return against? The Netherlands, I think, and scored right away. They're going to want to play for him again, of course. Netherlands, on the other hand, they've been to a World Cup final in the last decade. They've been to a World Cup semifinal in Brazil that they lost. But who do I have making it to the semifinals? I think I'm going to go with Denmark. Although, yes, the Netherlands have been back and getting better recently, the Euros were, to me, they're a bit of a write-off because Van Dijk was hurt and he sort of changes everything. And then also the manager, we don't need to talk about that. He's gone now. They're in a much better place now. Let's just put it that way. Frenkie de Jong is one of those midfield maestros for his team. He's really good. But there's just something about Denmark. I just have a belief about this team that they're going to play well and win. They're just a tough out. Well, I guess just the second international tournament running. I have them they're going to be a semifinalist. And now, who are they going to come up against? Spain or Brazil? I think I'm going to go with Spain. And I'll tell you why. They have a very distinct identity about their game. They play a certain way. Everybody's technically gifted on that team. And I just think Brazil, they've shown a little bit of cracks under pressure at tournaments recently. And I get it. Brazil, there's so much spotlight on that team. It's completely everything to those people, these tournaments. Players like Neymar, they're going to feel that pressure. You could see it in 2018 at the World Cup when they drew the first game, and then the second game, I think they beat Costa Rica, and some of the players, including Neymar, were like crying their eyes out at the end of the game. You could see literally the pressure and the weight being lifted off their shoulders, and they're literally crying their eyes out at full time after winning a group stage game. Those guys are going to be feeling that pressure, and I think Spain will be able to beat them. Look, I'm not saying it's just because of that. I'm not saying that at all, but I just think Spain's rejuvenates their revitalized team here with Luis Enrique as their manager and all those players I mentioned. I just think Spain are really good, and I think people underrate them a little bit as well. I think they're better than people give them credit for, even now. So I'm going to have a semifinal of Spain versus Denmark. Moving along here, we've got England versus France and Germany versus Portugal, the last 2 quarterfinals. England versus France, this was very close to being the World Cup final in 2018. This one, to me, I think comes down to, you're going to have, like I said, Deschamps versus Southgate, Benzema, Mbappe versus the back line of Harry Maguire, John Stones, and probably Walker. Oh my God. I can just see Mbappe and Benzema going nuts against these guys. Pickford in goal is good. Midfield, you're going to have Declan Rice alongside one of Jude Bellingham or Jordan Henderson or Calvin Phillips. I think I'm going to go with France. I think the reason why is just because until Southgate shows to us that he's willing to sort of unleash his players and let them play, I just don't see them winning the tournament. Their form recently has been poor. And like I said, I'm not going to base these predictions just on that, but we've seen it before. They have so much more potential than what we see from them. And France are in the same boat a little bit, but I think France will be able to defeat England. I think England have a really different team than years past. They're a likable team now, and they're a mentally stronger team now, but ultimately I just think France are a little bit better than them, and I think France will make another semifinal. And then here we go in the last quarterfinal, Germany, Portugal. These teams have played several times. The most recent one, obviously, was they were in the same group together at the Euros, along with France, actually. Portugal and Fernando Santos got completely outclassed. Portugal's another team that I think could be plagued by their manager, honestly. I know people have mentioned it plenty of times over, how much they despise Santos and how he gets things wrong, and you actually don't even know their best 11, really. And they also seem to have this ability to not be able to adjust, because if you guys go back and look at that Euros game, Germany was just killing them with the wingbacks, and they seemingly didn't adjust. Like, they kept scoring goals off of build-up play with the wingbacks, with Kimmich and Gosens. I would love to see Portugal go along and win this tournament. I would love to see Ronaldo win the World Cup. France could potentially. So who do I have, Germany or Portugal? I'm going to have to go with Germany. If you just want to talk about the managers, I think Hansi Flick is a much better manager than Santos. And ultimately, if you're a Portugal fan, you would probably agree with me that, you know, your coach may be your undoing in the end. Because like I mentioned, you guys have so many good players. If you want to go down the line, you got Rui Patricio in goal and Cancelo. Center backs, you've got Pepe, Ruben Diaz, and then left backs, you have Nuno Mendes and Rafa Guerrero, and midfielders Danilo, Neves, Bruno, Moutinho, and then obviously in attack, Ronaldo, Jota, Bernardo Silva. They have so many good players, and they ultimately, I think, aren't going to get the most out of this group with this manager, and I think they should have made the change a while ago, to be frank. And I think they may pay a penalty here in the quarterfinals of the World Cup for it. We're going to move on now to the semifinals of the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. We're down to Denmark, Spain, and France and Germany. These four teams came from the same two groups. So Denmark and France were in the same group, and Spain and Germany were in the same group. Kind of weird that it worked out that way. Do Denmark finally crack through and make a final, or do Spain play for their second World Cup in their history? And then obviously France and Germany, guys, that's a massive heavyweight rivalry there. That's a border rivalry in Europe. I would love to see that game be played in a World Cup semifinal. The stage would be massive. Denmark versus Spain, who to make the final? As I mentioned before, I think the Spanish team are very, very good, and so I'm going to pick them to beat Denmark and go to the final. You can't sort of sit off the ball and just defend the whole game anymore, and I don't think you can win a tournament that way, so you sort of have to play progressive and on the front foot and press and all that. Spain, I think, fit this current moment very well, even though they're a newer generation, younger players coming through. You know, you still have Busquets, Alba. So I have Spain to make the final. Alongside, we're going to go Germany, guys. A little bit for the same reasons as I had Portugal going out is Deschamps as a manager. There's a lot of times where you find yourself critiquing him or what he's doing, or I'm not even going to predict that there's going to be drama within this team this time. Just tactically, it's hard to put my faith in Deschamps when so many times oh man. I wish they would play just 4-2-3-1 and get after it like Germany are now. For that, I have a final of Spain versus Germany. So epic game, epic final, group stage rematch. We've already seen these nations play each other before in major tournament finals and semifinals. The final here to be played in Qatar 2022. I'm going to go with Spain as my winner. Let me give some thoughts about this final. All these young players coming through that I've mentioned over and over now, Pedri, Gavi, mixed with the veteran leadership of Busquets, Alba, Azpilicueta, Koke, Thiago, maybe Marco Asensio, we'll see. This is my first iteration of picks, guys. Forgive me if you don't agree with Spain or even Germany or whatnot. Leave it in the comments, we'll talk about it. This is sort of a battle of two teams that possess the ball a lot, but sometimes find themselves not being able to score. I think Spain, Germany would maybe go to extra time, maybe pens. And ultimately, I just have Pedri, Gavi, those young players coming out on top and winning the World Cup. If we scroll down here, a lot of people are going to be picking, the top three here. Most predicted to win by readers: Argentina, Brazil, England. It's an unpredictable tournament. That's going to be the end of this video. We'll revisit this in the fall before the World Cup starts, but I just wanted to put a predictions video out there for you guys. Spit out a ton of info, as much as I could. Thank you for watching. It's very much appreciated. We have Spain adding a second star to their shirt.